They say laughter is the best medicine, but apparently, not laughing is career suicide. At least that's what I learned 3 months ago when my boss, Derek Matthews, decided that my inability to find his recycled dad jokes hilarious was grounds for demotion. Let me paint you the picture. I'm Katherine Miller, 32 years old, and for 3 years I'd been the top performer in our sales division at Nexus Global Solutions, a multinational tech consulting firm with offices in 12 countries. 3 years of exceeding quotas, landing impossible clients, and basically keeping half our department profitable. But none of that mattered the day Derek decided I wasn't fun enough for the senior account manager position I'd been promised. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was sitting in the conference room with 5 other candidates for the promotion. Derek strutted in wearing his usual smug expression and that tie that screamed, "I shop at outlet malls but pretend it's designer." "All right, team," he announced. "Before we discuss the promotion, let me lighten the mood. Why don't scientists trust atoms?" He paused, expecting dramatic effect. "Because they make up everything." The room erupted in forced laughter. Tom Bradley, who'd been with the company for exactly 8 months, practically doubled over like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Sarah from accounting giggled like a schoolgirl. Even Mark, who I knew for a fact had a PhD in molecular chemistry, slapped his knee in exaggerated amusement. I sat there, stone-faced. Not because I was trying to be difficult, but because the joke wasn't funny. It was tired. It was the kind of humor you'd find in a children's joke book from 1987. And frankly, I had more important things to think about, like the Henderson Industries proposal I'd been working on for weeks. Derek's eyes locked onto mine. "Katherine, didn't you find that amusing?" "Not particularly," I replied honestly. "But I assume we're here to discuss the senior account manager position based on performance metrics and qualifications?" The room went dead silent. You could practically hear Derek's ego deflating like a punctured balloon. Before I tell you exactly how this moment of honesty became the foundation for the most satisfying comeback of my career, could you hit that like button and subscribe? Because what I'm about to share will show you how refusing to fake laugh at bad jokes can actually lead to a $2.3 million victory that left my entire company speechless. Trust me, you'll want to hear every detail of how one woman's authenticity turned a career setback into the deal of a lifetime. Derek's face turned 3 shades of red. "Well, Katherine, team dynamics are crucial in leadership positions. We need someone who can connect with people, someone who understands that work should be enjoyable." I knew exactly where this was heading, but I maintained my composure. "I agree. I believe my track record of maintaining excellent client relationships and consistently exceeding targets demonstrates my ability to connect with people in meaningful, profitable ways." That's not quite what I meant," Derek stammered. He was clearly flustered that I wasn't backing down or scrambling to laugh at his retroactive attempts at humor. Tom Bradley raised his hand like we were in elementary school. "Derek, I just want to say I really appreciate leaders who can bring levity to the workplace. I think humor is essential for team morale." Derek's face lit up like Tom had just solved world hunger. "Exactly, Tom. That's exactly the kind of leadership mindset we need around here." I watched this theatrical performance with growing disbelief. Tom Bradley, who'd managed to lose 2 major clients in his short tenure and whose idea of strategic thinking was asking me to explain basic contract terms, was positioning himself as the voice of workplace wisdom. "Tom," Derek continued, "your enthusiasm and positive attitude have been noticed by upper management. You bring energy to every room you enter." The writing was on the wall, but I had to hear it officially. "Derek, are you saying that workplace personality is being weighted more heavily than performance metrics in this decision?" "Katherine, success isn't just about numbers. It's about cultural fit. It's about being someone people want to work with, someone who can laugh at themselves and enjoy the journey. And you've determined that my 3 years of exceeding every target, bringing in over $4.2 million in new business, and maintaining a 98% client retention rate is less valuable than laughing at atom jokes?" Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Katherine, you're obviously skilled, but leadership requires emotional intelligence. It requires connecting with people on a human level. The Henderson Industries deal I'm currently negotiating is worth $2.3 million. I said calmly. Mr. Henderson specifically requested to work with me because, and I quote, Katherine doesn't waste time with small talk. She gets results. How does that factor into your assessment of my ability to connect with people? Tom interjected with the confidence of someone who'd never actually closed a major deal. Katherine, with respect, maybe that's exactly the problem. Maybe you're too focused on business and not focused enough on relationships. I stared at him for a full 10 seconds. This was the same Tom Bradley who'd asked me last week how to calculate commission percentages. The same Tom who'd CC'd the wrong client on a confidential email and had to beg me to help fix the situation. Tom, I said slowly, remind me of your total sales figures for this quarter? His confident expression wavered. Well, it's been a learning period, and I've been focusing more on relationship building and $340,000. I cut him off. Your total sales for 3 months was $340,000. I closed a single deal last month worth more than that. Derek jumped in quickly. Katherine, this isn't about comparing numbers. This is about potential. This is about who we see growing into a leadership role. And you see that person as someone with a quarter of my sales record, who's been here for 8 months, whose primary qualification appears to be finding your jokes entertaining. The tension in the room was palpable. Sarah from accounting was staring at her notepad like it contained the secrets of the universe. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Derek's voice took on an edge. Katherine, I'm going to be frank with you. Your attitude right now is exactly why you're not ready for leadership. Leaders need to know when to pick their battles. They need to know how to make people feel comfortable. And demoting your top performer because she doesn't laugh at bad jokes makes people comfortable? You're not being demoted, Derek said quickly. You're simply not being promoted at this time. Tom is being promoted to senior account manager, effective immediately. The room fell silent again. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not anger, not hurt, but clarity. Perfect, crystalline clarity about exactly what kind of company I was working for and exactly what kind of man Derek Matthews was. I stood up slowly and gathered my materials. Congratulations, Tom. I'm sure you'll bring a lot of laughter to the role. Derek looked relieved, probably thinking I was accepting defeat gracefully. Katherine, I hope you understand that this decision wasn't personal. We value your contributions, and there will be other opportunities. I paused at the door and turned back. Derek, you're absolutely right. This wasn't personal. It was business. And business, as I'm about to demonstrate, is something I understand much better than any of you realize. I walked out of that conference room with my head held high, but inside, I was calculating. Derek had just made the biggest mistake of his career, and he had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 6 a.m., 2 hours before anyone else. I had work to do, and I needed complete focus. The Henderson Industries deal wasn't just about $2.3 million anymore. It was about proving a point that would echo through every corridor of Nexus Global Solutions. James Henderson was notoriously difficult. He was the CEO of a mid-sized manufacturing company that had burned through 3 consulting firms in 2 years. He was demanding, exacting, and had zero tolerance for incompetence. Most of our competitors had written him off as impossible to work with, but I understood James Henderson. He didn't want a friend. He wanted results. He didn't want someone to laugh at his jokes. He wanted someone to solve his problems. And I had spent months studying his company, understanding his challenges, and developing a proposal that would revolutionize his entire operational structure. I opened my laptop and began refining my presentation. Every slide had to be perfect. Every projection had to be bulletproof. Every solution had to be innovative yet practical. This wasn't just a sales pitch. This was my declaration of war against mediocrity. At 7:30, Tom Bradley stumbled in, looking like he'd spent the night celebrating his promotion. His tie was crooked, his shirt was wrinkled, and he reeked of coffee and what I suspected was leftover alcohol. "Morning, Katherine," he said with a grin that I wanted to wipe off his face. "Hope there are no hard feelings about yesterday. Derek thinks we make a great team, you know? You with your analytical skills, and me with the people skills." I looked up from my computer screen. Tom, do you know what Henderson Industries does? He scratched his head. Manufacturing stuff, right? They manufacture precision components for aerospace applications. Their biggest client is Boeing. Their smallest contract is worth more than your annual salary. Does that sound like the kind of account that requires people skills or analytical expertise? Tom's grin faltered. Well, both, obviously. That's why Derek thinks Henderson Industries is a lost cause, I interrupted. He told me last month that we should stop wasting time on impossible clients and focus on easier wins. So why are you still working on it? I saved my document and closed my laptop. Because impossible clients are only impossible if you're not good enough to handle them. And Tom? I'm very, very good at what I do. I left him standing there looking confused and walked to the elevator. I had a meeting with James Henderson in 3 hours, and I was going to make sure it was a meeting that changed everything. The Henderson Industries headquarters was an imposing glass and steel structure in downtown Chicago. I arrived 15 minutes early, as always, and used the time to review my final notes. Every detail mattered. Every word had been chosen with precision. James Henderson's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, led me to the executive conference room. Mr. Henderson will be with you shortly. Can I get you coffee? Water? Water would be perfect. Thank you. I set up my presentation materials and took a moment to center myself. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment. Not just 3 months of working on this specific proposal, but 3 years of proving that I belonged in rooms exactly like this one. The door opened, and James Henderson walked in. He was exactly as I'd expected. Tall, imposing, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. He was followed by 3 other executives, including his CFO, Maria Santos, whom I'd spoken with several times during the preliminary discussions. Ms. Miller, Henderson said, extending his hand. I appreciate you coming in person. I know Chicago isn't exactly next door to your offices. Mr. Henderson, thank you for your time. I think what I'm about to show you will make the trip worthwhile for both of us. He gestured to the conference table. I'll be honest with you, Katherine. We've been disappointed by every consulting firm we've worked with. They promise the world and deliver PowerPoints. If you're here to waste my time with generic solutions and corporate buzzwords, we can end this meeting right now. I smiled. This was exactly the opening I'd hoped for. Mr. Henderson, I've spent 4 months studying your company. Not just your public financials, but your operational workflows, your supply chain inefficiencies, your quality control gaps, and your expansion opportunities. I'm not here to sell you generic solutions. I'm here to show you exactly how to increase your operational efficiency by 34% while reducing costs by $1.8 million annually. Henderson's eyebrows raised slightly. Those are very specific numbers. Because I don't deal in approximations. I opened my laptop and connected it to the conference room display. Everything I'm about to show you is based on data I've personally analyzed from your own systems. With your CFO's permission, of course. Maria Santos leaned forward. Katherine sent us the most comprehensive audit request I've ever seen. She asked questions our own consultants never thought to ask. The next hour was the most intense presentation of my career. I walked them through every aspect of their operation, identifying bottlenecks they didn't even know existed, and presenting solutions that were both innovative and immediately implementable. Henderson interrupted frequently, asking pointed questions that would have destroyed a less prepared presenter. But I had answers for everything. Not just surface-level responses, but detailed explanations backed by hard data and real-world examples. This workforce optimization model, Henderson said, studying one of my slides, you're suggesting we can maintain the same output with 15% fewer temporary contractors? Not suggesting, Mr. Henderson, guaranteeing. And I can show you exactly how. I clicked to the next slide, which displayed a detailed workflow analysis. Your current system has workers switching between stations inefficiently. By implementing cross-training protocols and redesigning your floor layout according to these specifications, you'll eliminate 73% of unnecessary movement and reduce production time per unit by an average of 12 minutes. And you've tested this model? I've run simulations based on your actual production data from the past 18 months. The results are consistent across seasonal variations and different product lines. Henderson's CFO, David Park, spoke up. What about implementation costs? I'd been waiting for this question. Initial investment of $340,000, with full ROI achieved within 4 months. After that, you're looking at pure profit improvement. The room fell silent as they absorbed the numbers. I could see Henderson calculating in his head, probably running through different scenarios and trying to find flaws in my logic. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. Katherine, I'm going to ask you something, and I want a completely honest answer. Of course. How confident are you that these numbers are achievable? I looked him directly in the eyes. Mr. Henderson, I've staked my career on this presentation. If I'm wrong about any of these projections, I'll personally oversee the implementation at no charge and absorb any losses myself. Henderson exchanged glances with his team. Maria Santos was nodding slowly. David Park was still studying the financial projections on his tablet. That's quite a guarantee, Henderson said. It's not a guarantee, Mr. Henderson. It's a promise. And I don't make promises I can't keep. Henderson stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The room was completely silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. I could feel my heart beating, but I kept my expression calm and confident. After what felt like an eternity, Henderson turned back to the table. Katherine, in 25 years of running this company, I've never seen a more thorough or convincing presentation. Your analysis identified problems we didn't even know we had, and your solutions are practical, measurable, and profitable. I nodded, not wanting to interrupt what I hoped was building to good news. However, he continued, and my stomach dropped slightly, this is a significant commitment. We're talking about restructuring major aspects of our operation based on your recommendations. I understand, Mr. Henderson. Change involves risk. It does. But so does staying stagnant. He returned to his seat and looked at each of his team members. Maria, what's your assessment? Katherine's financial projections are conservative, if anything. Based on her analysis, we might actually see better results than she's promising. David, the implementation timeline is aggressive but realistic, and the ROI calculations are solid. Henderson nodded and turned back to me. Katherine, I'm prepared to move forward, but I have conditions. I'm listening. First, I want you personally overseeing this project. Not your team, not your company's other consultants. You. Absolutely. Second, I want monthly progress reports with hard data. No corporate fluff, no excuses, just results. You'll have them. Third, if this works, and I believe it will, Henderson Industries wants exclusive rights to this optimization model for our industry sector. I paused. This was beyond what I'd expected. Mr. Henderson, I'd need to discuss exclusive licensing with my company, but I think we can work something out. Henderson smiled for the first time during the meeting. Then we have a deal. He extended his hand across the table. Welcome to the Henderson Industries family, Katherine. This is going to be the beginning of a very profitable relationship. I shook his hand, maintaining my professional composure. But inside, I was celebrating. Not just because I'd landed the deal, but because I'd proven something much more important than my sales ability. As I packed up my materials, Maria Santos approached me. Katherine, I have to ask, have you done this kind of comprehensive analysis for other clients? Every single one, I replied. This is how I work. This is who I am. Your company is lucky to have you. I smiled. We'll see about that. The flight back to our headquarters gave me 3 hours to think, and by the time I landed, I had a plan. Not just for how to handle the Henderson deal, but for how to handle Derek Matthews and the systemic problem he represented at Nexus Global Solutions. I didn't go straight to the office. Instead, I drove to my apartment, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat down with my laptop. The Henderson contract was safely in my briefcase, signed and sealed, but I wasn't ready to reveal it yet. Timing, I'd learned, was everything in business. I spent the evening researching something that had been nagging at me for months. Derek's management style wasn't just incompetent, it was suspicious. His decisions seemed designed to undermine certain people while elevating others who had no business being in leadership positions. I'd always attributed it to poor judgment, but now I wondered if there was something more deliberate at play. I started with our internal system, reviewing email patterns and client assignments from the past year. What I found made my blood run cold. Derek had been systematically intercepting my communications. High-value leads that should have come to me, the top performer, were being quietly redirected to other team members. Meetings I should have been invited to were happening without me. Client requests for me specifically were being filtered through Derek, who would then assign them to whoever was currently in his favor. But the most damning evidence was in a folder I almost missed: draft emails that were never sent. Derek had written scathing assessments of my attitude problems and lack of team spirit to upper management, but apparently thought better of sending them. Still, the fact that he'd written them at all told me everything I needed to know about his true opinion of me. The next morning, I arrived at the office with my game face on. The Henderson contract stayed locked in my desk drawer while I observed the chaos that was already beginning to unfold around Tom Bradley's promotion. "Katherine," Tom called out as soon as he saw me. "Thank God you're here. I need help with the Meridian account. They're asking about implementation timelines, and I don't really understand what they're looking for." I looked up from my computer. "Tom, you're the senior account manager now. Shouldn't you be handling your own accounts?" His face flushed. "Well, yes, but you know Meridian better than I do, and actually, I've never worked with Meridian. That was your account before the promotion, remember?" Tom shifted uncomfortably. "Right, but Derek said you'd help me transition into the role." Did Derek also explain that part of being senior account manager means you're supposed to mentor junior staff, not the other way around? Before Tom could respond, Derek appeared at my cubicle like a storm cloud. "Katherine, we need to talk. My office now." I followed him to his office, noting how his hands shook slightly as he closed the door. This was going to be interesting. "The Henderson deal," he said without preamble. "What's the status? What about it? Don't play games with me, Katherine. You met with them yesterday. How did it go?" I leaned back in my chair and studied his face. "Derek, I'm curious. Why do you care so much about an account you called a waste of time and suggested I abandon?" "I never said that." "Really? Because I have emails." I didn't, but his expression told me I didn't need them. "Would you like me to forward them to you? Or perhaps to upper management?" Derek's face went through several shades of red before settling on a mottled purple. "Katherine, I don't appreciate your tone. You're walking a very thin line here." "Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're the one walking the thin line. Tell me, Derek, how many high-value clients have we lost since Tom took over their accounts?" "That's not—" "Tom is still learning. The Morrison Group canceled their contract this morning." This was true. I'd overheard Tom's panicked phone call earlier. That's a $400,000 annual account that Tom managed to lose in less than a week. How exactly does that reflect your leadership judgment? Derek stood up abruptly. "You know what your problem is, Katherine. You think you're smarter than everyone else. You think you deserve special treatment because you can crunch numbers and manipulate clients." "Manipulate clients?" I stood up as well. "Is that what you call building lasting business relationships based on trust and results?" "I call it what it is. You're difficult to work with, you don't play well with others, and you have a serious attitude problem that's been noted by multiple colleagues." "Which colleagues, Derek? Because I'd love to hear their specific complaints." Derek fumbled for words. That's not the point. The point is that leadership requires more than just sales figures. You're right. It requires integrity. It requires making decisions based on merit rather than personal preference. It requires not sabotaging your own team members because you're threatened by their competence. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Derek's eyes widened, and I could see the exact moment he realized I knew more than I was letting on. "I don't know what you think you know," he said carefully, "but you're making very serious accusations." "Am I? Because I think I'm just stating facts. But since you brought up the Henderson deal, I should probably update you on the status." I pulled out my phone and made a show of checking my calendar. "I have a follow-up call with James Henderson this afternoon to discuss next steps." It wasn't a lie, exactly. Henderson had mentioned wanting to discuss implementation timelines, though the contract was already signed. Derek's expression shifted from anger to anxiety. "What kind of next steps?" The kind that come after a successful presentation to a client who's been burned by 3 previous consulting firms. The kind that demonstrate the value of thorough preparation and professional competence. Katherine, if you've somehow managed to salvage this account, that would be excellent news for the team. For the team? Or for you personally, when upper management asks how you've been developing talent and managing high-value opportunities? Derek sat back down heavily. I could practically see the gears turning in his head as he realized that my success with Henderson might actually reflect well on his management, despite his best efforts to undermine me. Look, he said, attempting a conciliatory tone. Maybe I've been too hard on you. Maybe there's room for both different personality types in leadership. If you can close Henderson, that's a huge win for everyone. If I can close Henderson? I let the words hang in the air. Derek, do you remember what you said to me yesterday? About picking battles and knowing when to be comfortable? Yes? You're about to learn what happens when someone picks the right battle at exactly the right time. I left his office without another word, leaving Derek to stew in his own uncertainty. The afternoon couldn't come fast enough. At 3 p.m., I made my follow-up call with Henderson. In reality, I called him to confirm some implementation details and to set up a meeting with his team for the following week. But I made sure to have the conversation loudly enough for my colleagues to overhear. Mr. Henderson, I'm so pleased we could move forward with the full implementation. Yes, the timeline we discussed will work perfectly. Absolutely. Having your entire executive team involved shows the kind of commitment that makes partnerships successful. By the time I hung up, half the office was pretending not to stare at me. Tom Bradley looked like he was going to be sick. But I wasn't done yet. The real show was about to begin. That evening, I sent an email to Rebecca Chen, our regional director, requesting a meeting to discuss my career trajectory and some concerns about operational efficiency in our division. Rebecca was Derek's boss, and someone I'd always respected for her no-nonsense approach to business. The meeting was scheduled for the following Friday, exactly 1 week after my humiliation in Derek's conference room. I spent that week carefully documenting everything. Derek's suspicious email patterns, the accounts that had been redirected away from me, Tom's growing list of client management failures, and most importantly, the evidence of systematic bias in promotion and assignment decisions. But I also spent the week implementing something else. A comprehensive analysis of our entire client portfolio using the same methodology I'd applied to Henderson Industries. If Derek wanted to question my value to the company, I was going to demonstrate exactly how much value I brought and how much potential was being wasted by his incompetent management. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching Derek's mood as he watched me gather materials for my meeting with Rebecca. He'd clearly heard about the meeting through the office grapevine and had spent the week in a state of barely controlled panic. Katherine, he cornered me by the elevator. Whatever you're planning to discuss with Rebecca, maybe we should talk first. Clear the air, you know? Clear the air about what, Derek? About any misunderstandings we might have had? About communication issues or differences in management style? The elevator arrived, and I stepped inside. Derek, I think our communication has been perfectly clear. You've made your priorities obvious, and I've responded accordingly. As the elevator doors closed on his worried face, I allowed myself a small smile. Rebecca Chen's office was on the executive floor, and I was about to have the most important conversation of my career. Rebecca's assistant showed me into a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Rebecca herself was exactly as I remembered. Sharp, professional, and intimidatingly competent. She was reviewing something on her tablet when I entered. Katherine, thank you for coming. I have to admit, your email intrigued me. Please, have a seat. I settled into the chair across from her desk and opened my portfolio. Rebecca, thank you for making time. What I want to discuss affects not just my career, but the operational efficiency and profitability of our entire division. That's quite a statement. I'm listening. I took a breath and began. 3 days ago, I closed the Henderson Industries account. It's a $3 million contract with exclusive licensing opportunities that could generate an additional $15 million in business over the next 3 years. Rebecca's eyebrows shot up. Henderson Industries? Didn't Derek tell me that account was a lost cause months ago? He did. He also told me to stop wasting time on impossible clients and focus on easier wins. But I don't believe in impossible clients. I believe in impossible consultants. I slid a copy of the signed Henderson contract across her desk. Rebecca picked it up and scanned it quickly, her expression growing more interested by the second. This is impressive work, Katherine. The scope of services alone is more comprehensive than most of our annual accounts. Thank you, but Rebecca, that's not why I asked for this meeting. Oh? I opened my laptop and turned it so she could see the screen. I want to show you something that's been happening in our division, and I want to discuss how we can fix it before it costs the company millions in lost opportunity. For the next hour, I walked Rebecca through everything. The systematic redirection of high value leads away from top performers. The promotion of unqualified candidates based on personality rather than merit. The pattern of client losses that had accelerated since Derek's recent management decisions. But more importantly, I showed her the solution. This is a comprehensive analysis of our entire client portfolio, I explained, clicking through slides that represented weeks of work. Using the same methodology I applied to Henderson Industries, I've identified $23 million in unrealized potential across our existing accounts. These are improvements we could implement within 6 months, with minimal risk and maximum ROI. Rebecca leaned forward, studying the projections. You've done this level of analysis for all our major accounts? Every single one. And I've identified the specific obstacles preventing us from realizing this potential. I clicked to the next slide. Inadequate account management, missed opportunities for service expansion, and most critically, the assignment of complex accounts to consultants who lack the analytical skills or experience to maximize their value. Are you suggesting that our current management structure is inefficient? I'm stating that our current management structure is costing us approximately $4.6 million annually in lost revenue, and potentially much more in missed opportunities for long-term growth. Rebecca sat back in her chair, processing what I'd shown her. Katherine, this is significant. Have you discussed any of this with Derek? Rebecca, Derek doesn't know about the Henderson contract yet. He doesn't know? She looked at the contract again. Why not? Because I wanted to have this conversation first. I wanted you to understand the full scope of what's happening in our division before Derek starts taking credit for work he actively tried to prevent. I leaned forward. 3 days before I closed Henderson Industries, Derek passed me over for promotion in favor of Tom Bradley. His stated reason was that I wasn't fun enough and didn't laugh at his jokes. Since then, Tom has lost the Morrison Group account and created serious problems with 3 other clients. Rebecca's expression darkened. Are you telling me that Derek made promotion decisions based on personal preference rather than performance metrics? I'm telling you that Derek has been systematically undermining high-performing team members while elevating people who pose no threat to his position. And it's costing the company millions. I clicked to my final slide, which showed a comparison of potential revenue under current management versus optimized management structure. Rebecca, I'm not here to complain about unfair treatment. I'm here to propose a solution that benefits everyone, except people who are more interested in protecting their ego than growing the business. Rebecca studied the final slide for a long moment. Katherine, what exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing that we restructure the division around competence rather than politics. I'm proposing that we implement the optimization model I've developed across our entire client portfolio. And I'm proposing that we do it before our competitors figure out what we're missing. And where do you see yourself in this restructured division? I'd been waiting for this question. Wherever I can be most effective. If that's as a senior analyst developing optimization strategies, I'm interested. If that's as an account manager implementing these improvements directly with clients, I'm interested. If that's in a leadership role helping to transform how this company approaches client relationships, I'm very interested. Rebecca closed her laptop and looked at me directly. Katherine, what you've shown me today is exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need more of in this company. But implementing changes of this magnitude would require significant shifts in personnel and structure. I understand. Change is always difficult, especially when it challenges established hierarchies. Indeed. Rebecca stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the city. Tell me, if Derek were to ask you about the Henderson contract, what would you tell him? The truth. That I closed it 3 days ago, and that we now have the opportunity to scale this success across multiple accounts if we're willing to make the necessary changes to support that growth. Rebecca turned back to me. And if he takes credit for your work? Then he'll have to explain to you why he previously described Henderson Industries as a waste of time, while simultaneously claiming credit for a $2.3 million success. Rebecca smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her during the entire meeting. Katherine, I'm going to be very direct with you. What you've presented today isn't just impressive. It's exactly what this company needs to stay competitive. But it also raises serious questions about current management effectiveness. I understand. I'm going to need some time to review everything you've shown me and to have some conversations with other executives. In the meantime, I want you to continue developing this optimization model. I want a full implementation plan on my desk by next Friday. You'll have it? And Katherine, not a word about this meeting to anyone until we've had a chance to address the structural issues you've identified. I gathered my materials and stood up. Of course. Thank you for your time, Rebecca. As I reached the door, she called out, Katherine, that Henderson deal, exceptional work. That's exactly the kind of result this company should be celebrating. I smiled. Thank you. I think there are many more where that came from. The elevator ride back to my floor felt like descending from the clouds back to earth, but I knew that everything was about to change. The only question was how quickly and how dramatically. Derek was waiting by my desk when I returned, trying to look casual while obviously dying of curiosity. How did your meeting go? He asked, as if he hadn't been calculating ways to control the damage for the past hour. Very well, thank you. I sat down and began organizing the materials on my desk. Did you discuss anything specific? I looked up at him with innocent eyes. Oh, just career development stuff. You know how it is. Derek's relief was visible. Good, good. Career development is important. In fact, I've been thinking that maybe we should discuss some additional opportunities for you. Maybe some advanced training or expanded responsibilities. That's very thoughtful, Derek. Actually, there is something I wanted to update you on. His hopeful expression encouraged me to continue. The Henderson Industries deal closed yesterday. Full contract, $2.3 million with options for expanded services. I thought you'd want to know for your quarterly reports. Derek's mouth fell open. You closed Henderson Industries? I did. Signed contract, first payment processed this morning. I have the details if you'd like to review them. For a moment, Derek looked genuinely pleased. Katherine, that's incredible. This is huge for the division, for the company. It is. I mean, this completely changes our quarterly projections. This puts us ahead of every other division in the company. It does. Derek's enthusiasm was building as he began to see the implications. We need to announce this. We need to let everyone know what a huge win this is for the team. Do we? Something in my tone made him pause. Well, yes. This is exactly the kind of success we should be celebrating. This shows what happens when management provides the right support and guidance to help team members reach their potential. I leaned back in my chair. Derek, help me understand something. Yesterday you told me I wasn't ready for leadership because I don't understand team dynamics. Today you want to announce my success as evidence of your effective management. Which version is true? Derek's expression shifted as he realized the trap he'd walked into. Katherine, I think you're misunderstanding. Am I? Because it seems like when I fail, it's evidence of my personal shortcomings. But when I succeed, it's evidence of your leadership effectiveness. Is that how accountability works in your management philosophy? That's not... Look, Katherine, I may have been too harsh yesterday. Leadership decisions are complex and sometimes... Derek. My voice was quiet but firm. I want you to understand something very clearly. The Henderson Industries deal happened in spite of your management, not because of it. I succeeded because I ignored your advice, defied your priorities, and pursued an opportunity you told me to abandon. Derek's face was cycling through emotions: confusion, anger, fear, and something that looked like dawning realization. And Derek, this is just the beginning. I turned back to my computer, leaving him standing there trying to process what had just happened. Through my peripheral vision, I could see him standing frozen for several more seconds before finally walking back to his office. The next week passed in a strange bubble of tension. Derek seemed to be waiting for some other shoe to drop, while I focused on developing the comprehensive implementation plan Rebecca had requested. Tom continued to struggle with his new responsibilities, losing another client and creating problems that I was increasingly being asked to solve. The entire dynamic of the office had shifted. People were starting to look at me differently, not just as the person who'd closed an impossible deal, but as someone who might be operating on a completely different level than they'd realized. Friday morning arrived with an email from Rebecca's assistant. Please report to conference room A at 10 a.m. for a divisional leadership meeting. I arrived to find Rebecca, Derek, and two other executives I recognized but had never worked with directly: Michael Santos, the regional VP, and Jennifer Walsh, the head of human resources. Derek looked like he hadn't slept well in days. Please, everyone take a seat, Rebecca began. We're here to discuss some significant changes in our divisional structure and leadership. She opened a folder and consulted some notes. Over the past week, I've been conducting a comprehensive review of our division's performance, management effectiveness, and growth opportunities. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat. This review was prompted by some concerning patterns in our account management, client retention, and personnel development that came to my attention. It was also prompted by some exceptional work that demonstrated both the potential for improvement and the obstacles that have been preventing us from realizing that potential. Rebecca turned to me. Katherine, would you please update everyone on the Henderson Industries account? I straightened in my chair. Henderson Industries signed a $2.3 million contract last week for comprehensive operational optimization services. The initial contract includes provisions for expanded services that could generate an additional $15 million over the next 3 years. Michael Santos whistled low. Henderson Industries? I thought that account was considered unworkable. It was, Rebecca replied. Derek had recommended that we discontinue pursuit of that client and focus resources elsewhere. Derek's face was turning red. Rebecca, Henderson Industries had a reputation for being extremely difficult. From a resource allocation perspective, Derek, Rebecca interrupted. Katherine not only closed Henderson Industries, but she did so while developing a comprehensive analysis methodology that she's applied to our entire client portfolio. Katherine, would you share what you found? For the next 30 minutes, I walked through the optimization opportunities I'd identified, the revenue potential we'd been missing, and the specific management decisions that had been preventing us from capitalizing on our existing relationships. When I finished, the room was silent except for the scratch of Michael Santos taking notes. Finally, Jennifer Walsh spoke up. Katherine, this level of analysis is impressive, but I'm concerned about the implications for current management structure. Are you suggesting that systematic changes are needed? I chose my words carefully. I'm suggesting that we have an opportunity to dramatically improve our performance by aligning account assignments with consultant capabilities and by implementing decision-making processes based on data rather than personal preferences. Can you be more specific? Michael Santos asked. I glanced at Rebecca, who nodded encouragingly. Over the past year, high-value leads have been systematically assigned to consultants who lack the analytical skills to maximize their potential. Clients who specifically request certain team members are having their accounts reassigned based on factors that have nothing to do with performance or client satisfaction. And promotion decisions are being made based on criteria that don't correlate with actual business results. Derek couldn't stay silent any longer. Katherine, I think you're oversimplifying complex management decisions. Leadership involves more than just technical skills. Derek, Michael Santos interrupted. Katherine just presented evidence of $23 million in unrealized potential. How do you respond to that? Derek fumbled for words. Well, obviously Katherine is very skilled, and I've always supported her development. Is that why you passed her over for promotion in favor of someone with a quarter of her sales record? Rebecca's question was delivered with surgical precision. The room went dead silent. Derek looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Jennifer Walsh leaned forward. Derek, I'd like you to explain the criteria you used for the recent senior account manager promotion. Derek's voice was barely above a whisper. Tom Bradley showed strong potential and good team dynamics. Tom Bradley has lost 2 major accounts since his promotion, Michael Santos stated flatly. Meanwhile, Katherine closed the largest single contract in our division's quarterly history. Help me understand the logic. Derek looked desperately around the room, seeking some kind of support that clearly wasn't coming. Rebecca opened another folder. Derek, I'm going to be direct. Our review has identified serious deficiencies in your management approach, including evidence of personal bias in assignment and promotion decisions, failure to capitalize on high-value opportunities, and systematic undermining of your most productive team members. I've always tried to do what's best for the team. Derek, Jennifer Walsh interrupted. What's best for the team is leadership that makes decisions based on merit, performance, and potential for business growth. What we've seen is the opposite. Michael Santos closed his notebook. Derek, effective immediately. You're being reassigned to a client services role where your attention to relationship building can be better utilized. Your management responsibilities are being transferred. Derek's face went through several shades of pale. You're demoting me. We're placing you in a position where your skills are better suited to company needs, Rebecca replied diplomatically. Derek turned to me with something that looked like desperation. Katherine, surely you don't support this. We've worked together for years. Derek, I said quietly. For years, you've worked to undermine my contributions to this company. I've succeeded in spite of your management, not because of it. This decision isn't about personal feelings. It's about business results. Derek slumped in his chair, finally understanding that his career as a manager was over. Michael Santos turned to me. Katherine, we'd like to offer you Derek's position as divisional manager with expanded responsibilities for implementing the optimization strategies you've developed. Actually, Rebecca interjected, we'd like to offer you something more significant. We're creating a new position, Director of Strategic Client Development. You'd be responsible not just for this division, but for developing and implementing optimization strategies across all our regional operations. I felt a surge of satisfaction, but kept my expression professional. What would that entail? It would entail exactly what you've been doing, identifying unrealized potential, developing strategies to capitalize on that potential, and leading teams that can execute at the highest level. It would also mean a significant salary increase and equity participation in the growth you generate. Michael Santos nodded. Katherine, what you've demonstrated isn't just exceptional individual performance. It's strategic thinking that could transform how this entire company operates. I looked around the room at the faces watching me expectantly. Derek looked defeated. Jennifer Walsh looked impressed. Michael Santos looked hopeful. And Rebecca looked like someone who'd just solved a very complex puzzle. I accept, I said simply. Rebecca smiled. Excellent. Katherine, I want you to start immediately on developing implementation plans for the top 20 accounts you identified. You'll have full authority to reassign accounts, restructure teams, and implement whatever changes you deem necessary to maximize performance. And Derek's role? I asked. Tom Bradley will be returning to his previous position as a junior account manager, with additional training and closer supervision. Derek will be handling smaller accounts where his relationship-building skills can be effective without strategic decision-making responsibilities. It was perfect. More than perfect. It was exactly the kind of comprehensive justice that Derek's incompetence and pettiness deserved. As the meeting broke up, Derek lingered behind, looking like he wanted to say something. I waited. Katherine, he said finally, I want you to know that I never intended— I always thought I was doing what was best for the company. I studied his face, looking for any sign of genuine understanding or remorse. What I saw was mostly self-pity and confusion. Derek, I said, the road to mediocrity is paved with good intentions. The difference between good managers and great managers isn't their intentions, it's their results. He nodded slowly, like someone accepting a diagnosis they don't fully understand. But Derek, I hope this experience teaches you something valuable. I hope it teaches you that competence isn't a threat to be managed. It's an asset to be leveraged. As I walked out of the conference room and toward my new office, Derek's former office, I reflected on how dramatically everything had changed in exactly 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, I'd been passed over for a promotion because I didn't laugh at bad jokes. Today, I was the Director of Strategic Client Development, with authority over multiple divisions and the opportunity to implement strategies that could generate tens of millions in new business. The best part? I was just getting started. As I settled into my new chair and looked out at the city skyline, I thought about James Henderson's words. This is going to be the beginning of a very profitable relationship. He was right, but not in the way he'd expected. This was the beginning of a very profitable relationship between Katherine Miller and a company that had finally learned to recognize and reward true competence. And for Derek Matthews, Tom Bradley, and anyone else who confused politics for performance, this was the beginning of a very different kind of education.